As I look around this room, I'm relatively sure that there is nobody that doesn't already know our speaker. He has spoken to this group on several occasions in the past. He's a former Attorney General of North Dakota. He's a former district court judge. And he is a retired naval captain, interestingly enough, in the United States Navy. And for those of you who are not sailor-oriented particularly, a naval captain is the equivalent of an Army, Air Force, Marine Corps full bird colonel. So he's up there amongst the high and mighty. He knows his stuff. He's talked to us about the submarine USS North Dakota. He's talked to us about the battleship USS North Dakota. And tonight he's going to talk about the city of Bismarck. Bob, it's yours.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for being here. We're going to watch a quick video and another piece of video, and I'm going to sit down to show you that. When I saw this video the night before the christening, it blew me away. So here we are.
Seafaring nations across the centuries have maintained a tradition of formally dedicating ships into their fleet. This ship will now transition from her life here at Austell and begin her new life at sea, infused with the spirit of Congresswoman Jane Harmon. Through today's ceremony, we commemorate this important milestone in the life of the USNS City of Bismarck.
This is the crest of the USNS city of Bismarck. It's a great honor for us to have a United States Navy ship named for our great city. So let's try the next slide. Okay, you saw in that piece of video, our ship's going to look like all the rest of these ships right here. It's all aluminum. There's only a little bit of steel on it. There's some overhead things in the engine room. The diesel engines are steel, and there's some stanchions in the middle of the ship to hold the main decks up that are steel. All the rest is aluminum, and it's really quite something. It's made by a company called Austal, Austal USA, which is building these ships in Mobile, Alabama at their shipyard. And Austal, I understand, is an Australian company, and Austal stands for Australia Aluminum. That's what they got. And these ships that they make, and they started out as transports in the Australian area, and there we found, what's that?
Passenger ferries.
Passenger ferries, right. So let's go to the next one. Just another view showing the stern of it and the helicopter up on deck. Go ahead. This is the front end, the business end coming straight at us, and we'll see that. Go ahead. This is the loading ramp, unloading. This ship is manned by civilians. There's no military people running the ship, no Navy people running it. To handle cargo, it has to leave and come into a secure port facility. And they have to tie alongside this big ramp, has to go down the pier, and people walk on or drive on. So let's try the next slide. Okay. USS is United States ship. That's a warship operated by the U.S. Navy. USNS stands for United States Naval Ship. It's a civilian manned ship operated by the Military Sealift Command. Next slide. USNS City of Bismarck, EFP9. This is how Austal refers to it, but the Navy refers to it as EFP9. The T, when you'll see that, stands for Military Sealift Command. E stands for Expeditionary. The F stands for Fast. P stands for Transport. 9 is the ninth one of the series. General characteristics: it's an expeditionary fast transport. It's designed to move people from point A to point B within a theater of about 1,400 miles. It has a tonnage, it displaces 2,362 tons. It's 337 feet long. It's 93 feet 6 inches wide, and it has a draft of 12 foot 7 inches, which is important. It's got a very shallow draft, so it can get into lots of places. Now, if you think about our submarine is 437 feet long and 36 feet in diameter. So this is much wider than the submarine. And next slide, please. Okay, it's got 4 big diesel engines. It's got reduction gears. For those of you who are really cool about Navy stuff, this means something. It means nothing to me, but all I know is it takes the power and puts it down and turns it into propelling water. It's got to go at 43 knots, which is 49 miles per hour. Now, for a ship, that's really moving. I think it could almost keep up with a nuclear submarine. They don't tell you how fast the nuclear submarines go, but I have reason to believe they go plenty fast underwater. It has a range of 1,400 miles. It's capable of carrying boats and landing craft. It can deploy various rigid hull inflatable boats. And its capacity is carrying 600 tons. That's people, gear, tanks, trucks, whatever all you want to put in it. Next slide, please. Okay, there they are. 312 troops in theater-style seating with limited bunks. Now, Susan and Nancy and Greg and I all had a chance to tour the city of Bismarck the day before the christening, and we got to see all this stuff. We sat in the theater-style seats. They're very comfortable. They have about 100 racks, so they can sort of hot bunk it and run people through to and through. But basically, the guys sit out there. They got multiple TV sets out front to watch. They can do briefings in different parts of the ship. They've got racks for putting their weapons up in front. They really have tried on this thing. Now, it is not a warship. This is not a warship, but it does have 4 mounts on the 4 corners where they can put a 50 caliber machine gun up there. Its main defense is running away. At 49 miles per hour, there are very few pirates that can keep up to them. But if anybody wants to get close enough, most pirates won't stand still when the 50 caliber machine gun is aimed anywhere near them. So they were. And aircraft. It doesn't carry any airplanes, but it does have a landing pad for a helicopter. It can take up to the largest helicopters in the U.S. Navy. Not only will it take a helicopter, when you fold the rotary wings back and you can park it. It doesn't have a hangar, but just park it off to the side, so you can basically have 2 helos up there. It's a big flight deck, and it's going to be quite a thing. Let's try the next one. This is a schematic showing the decks on this ship. Look at the bottom one first. That's the hangar bay where all the gear gets moved in. All the trucks, the tanks, the tractors, anything else, all fits on that level. They're tied on clamps to tie it all down. The level above it is the troop carrier area, and they have the 312 seats. They have mess facilities up there. They have restrooms for men and women. They have a bunking area. So that's pretty comprehensive. The next level up is the bridge where they control the ship, and behind that there are staterooms for the ship's company. Ship's company is about 26 people, and the little glass thing, that's the bridge area is sort of right up here. It's sort of half elevated. This is one level, this is another level, so it fits on there. Next slide, please. Okay, now, there are certain events in the life of a ship. In the warfare Navy was a keel laying ceremony, there's a christening, and the commissioning. Now, because the city of Bismarck is not a commissioned warship, there is no commissioning ceremony. So the 2 ceremonies we had for the city of Bismarck were the keel laying ceremony and the christening ceremony. Now, the sponsor of this ship is former Congresswoman Jane Harmon of California. She's presently the President, Chief Executive Officer of the Woodrow Wilson Institute. She was picked for this job by Secretary Mabus. She said she had lunch with him one day, and he said, "You should sponsor a ship." She said, "I don't know." She said, "Well, I'm going to give you a ship anyway." So they assigned her to the city of Bismarck. Now, I think in a lot of cases they actually try to find a sponsor, somewhat close to the area. But he said, why not? She wants a sponsorship, we're going to make her the sponsor of this ship. Now the ship sponsor normally handles all the evolutions. The regular ship, she handles the keel laying, she handles the christening, and she handles the commissioning. And for these ships, they handle the keel laying and the christening. Well, I'm not exactly certain why, but she did not arrange her schedule to come out for the keel laying ceremony. And the Navy wanted to get this keel laid so they could start moving it along. I said, I'm coming down. I bought a ticket. I was all set to come down. I said, I'm going to be there on January 18th when you told me this thing was going to take place, so I just want to watch what's happening. So about a week before that date, they emailed me and said, send us your initials. He said, you're going to be the keel authenticator. So this is very rare. So I got the privilege of authenticating the keel of the city of Bismarck. It was a real big deal. And as you can see, I wear a coat and I looked real cool in my suit, and they were all nice to me, and I was treated like a real dignitary. Now, I had some witnesses, 2 witnesses, Harley and Margaret Swenson. I made sure they got on the guest list because they were wintering down in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and they very nicely came over for the keel laying ceremony. I think they enjoyed it. It was a nice thing. Yeah, it was a great thing. All right, the next slide. Here's what they do in the keel laying. They weld your initials to a steel plate, and that steel plate is then welded into the ship. So it's there for the life of the ship. So moi, R-O-W, has his initials in the ship. They'll be there for the life of the ship. And for those of you who live long enough, when this ship is taken out of service, I want you to insist that they take this plate out and send it back to the library so you can display it. Now, as a memento, they sent me this nice metal plaque. It's got the whole deal on it. It's Honorable Robert Wefald and my initials there. Now, I don't have enough wall space for this, I'm going to try to find a home for it. And I want to do that concurrent with getting a model of the ship made, but I haven't found a source that'll do that for a price that's rational. I think a model of this ship that's held by Austal is like $8,000 to $10,000. Hey. All right, well anyway, the guy that's doing the welding is not me. Next slide.
Is the person next to him you?
Yeah, well, no, just don't end it. Just go to do the. Hey, there it is. They gave me this nice helmet. This guy was a big guy with a beard. He was one of the Class A veteran welders, and they gave him the honor of doing this, and he was very excited about it. And I was particularly excited. I didn't get burned, and I was able to watch the whole deal. Next slide. They gave me this plaque, and it's seen right here, and this guy's name is Bill Adams, and this is a crew, and this is a welder, and a couple of Navy people. But they all agreed to stand next to me, which I thought was very, very kind of them. Standing next to an old Navy guy. Next slide, please. This is the one thing that sort of impressed me the day I looked around, is that they had, I wanted to look for the propellers. These are the propellers. There are no propellers. It's a water jet powered. It's got 2 diesels in each hull. They spin these turbines around and generate a lot of water, and they send them through reduction gears, and it takes this water out in the force, and they send it out through these back here. It's just like a jet engine in an airplane. And they can maneuver which way it turns. This ship can turn in its own radius. It can swivel around. And they can stop basically on a dime. They just reverse it. This is the current technology in the Navy. Now, these are run by diesels. The destroyers, the modern destroyers, have gas turbine engines, but the same principle of propulsion through the water is what does it. I can tell you I was riding one of the newer destroyers from Boston to Norfolk, Virginia. Whenever the Oklahoma bombing happened, I was out at sea. And there was another civilian on board who had a stroke, and they had to get him down to Norfolk. We're getting close, and so they crank up. They're going like 30, 35 knots, just moving out. And a carrier says, I'm going to send a helo to you and pick this guy up and bring him in. And so as the helo is approaching the ship, the destroyer, I was on the bridge. I watched this happen. It went from 33 knots down to 12 knots in 30 seconds. Not a ripple, not a fuss, ready to go. So these propulsion systems are absolutely incredible. I want you to, let's see, what's the next slide? Oh yeah. So I got to take a tour of another ship down there. This was an earlier tour when I was down to see another ship. But I want to back up just a minute. Margaret and Harley and I, after the keel laying ceremony, the guy says, do you want to see how these are done? We said, yes, we do. So they took us to one end of a hangar and it said, here's where we start. And we walked in and there was all this plate aluminum. And they showed us how they bent and moved and put them together and welded the pieces. And by the end, the other end of this hangar, there were full sections, modules built. And they said, we haul these modules out and we take them over to the assembly area where our ship was put together. So anyway, this is what the bridge looks like. When I was in the Navy, we'd have lots of people on the bridge. We'd all be standing around. The only person who ever sat on the bridge was the captain, and if there's a commodore, they got to sit. Everybody else stood. These guys have these nice, comfortable seats. One more, next slide, please. They've got joysticks. You see up here like these things here? The kids would love these for computer games. They drive the ship by those things there. All the comm gears right here, the radars, they can see what the picture is, plus they can look out ahead and see. Now look out ahead, and actually looking out and seeing things, I want you to know is very important, because these 2 destroyers that have had accidents, I think that if they looked out, you could probably see a huge ship. But that's only me. And right behind this gear is the chief engineer, the guy that drives the power plant. There's nobody down in the engine room. No one's down in the engine room. They're remotely controlled from the bridge. They got TVs looking at everything down there. It's absolutely next, please. Well, there's the engine room. These yellow things are part of the steel. This is part of the steel. And that's it. Everything else is aluminum. I had to get down here and show you that I could actually get down the engine room. And lo and behold, there I am down in one of the big diesels. They really, really work. Next picture. Okay, now the next event in the life of the ship is the christening ceremony. And this was held on May 13th. Our sponsor was the Honorable Jane Harmon, a congresswoman, former congresswoman of California, head of the Woodrow Wilson Institute. Let's go to the next slide. We had a pre-christening tour, and it was really fun. We had Mayor Mike Seminer, his wife Deb, and their daughter Megan, right? Morgan. And then we had Nancy and Greg and myself and Susan. So here we are, Morgan, Susan, Deb, Nancy, Mike, Greg, Bob. They gave us a grand tour. Very, very nice. And we got to ask all kinds of questions and walk around and point to things and say, what's this? And we got to sit down and test the theater-style seating. And it wasn't bad. It was pretty comfortable, wasn't it?
It can recline.
Yeah, it can recline. And they got little trays that'll go up. You can write letters or eat your food there or whatever. Yeah. Next slide. Here we are on our tour. The woman with her arm up explaining things is Susan. We had a nice trip. It was a really nice tour. And they're building, on the other side, they were building a littoral combat ship. And he said, don't take any pictures of that, but you can take all the pictures you want over here. So next slide, please. And this is our little group at the end. I have to show you two people here. This lady is the mother of the master, the commanding officer, and this is his dad. They're very nice people. They live in Massachusetts, and their son went to the Merchant Marine Academy and is a full-time civilian mariner working out there. Now, let me just talk about this a minute. So I told you the planned crew size is 24, although my inside person I talked to a day or two ago, Patricia Evenson. She's a 2010 Century High School graduate. She went to the Kings Point Merchant Marine Academy. She graduated in 2014, received a commission as a reserve naval officer, and promptly went into the Merchant Marine, has a 6-year tour there. So her dad, Jerry, is here. Yay, Jerry, raise your hand. Yay. I can tell you, our committee, Calvin Hullett, myself, Bill Butcher, and I'm not sure who else, I guess the three of us, had lunch with her the day before New Year's, coming around, and bright, talented, enthusiastic. She said, I love it. I'm having such a great time. She's been all over the world. She's been to ports all over the world. She's having a great time, and now she's the second officer of the city of Bismarck. So that puts her higher up in the pecking order. There's the captain, there's the first officer, the second officer, and then the chief engineer is pretty up in the top of there. So she's one of 4 people that's right up at the top, and she's having an absolutely great time. So when I want to know something, I contact her when I can contact her, because she ought to see a lot and pretty busy. So I think she's in great hands. She's really excited about this. They're out at sea in Mobile Bay doing all kinds of qualifications. It's still owned by Austal. It's not owned by the Navy yet, because they want to make sure everything tests out right and get all the last finishing touches on. I expect that the Navy will assume ownership of it sometime toward the end of the year. All right, next slide, please. The christening, Susan had to miss this part, unfortunately, because of plane scheduling. She had to get home. But the christening was preceded by a breakfast that morning at the big fancy Austal headquarters, and all these people are the ones who are going to be up on the stage. Various admirals, and this is the chaplain, I think the master of the boat, the ship right here. Admiral Mewbourne is someplace. I think this is Admiral Mewbourne over here. No, Mewbourne is one of these guys right here. Anyway, this girl right here is the flower girl. She's the daughter of a deserving Austral employee, and she had the honor of being the flower girl, and she absolutely was thrilled to be there. Oh, this guy right here was the principal speaker. He was absolutely phenomenal. He is the one who runs, he's the officer in charge of the United States Transportation Command. He's an Air Force 4-star general, and I tell you what, he really knew his stuff, didn't he? Very, very impressive. Next slide, please. The one thing they did that morning was they brought a box out, and they put various things in the box, little mementos. And this is something I'd never seen done before, but it's called a mass stepping box. And they explained, in the old days when they built the big ships out of wood and put them up, that they always put something under the mast. And typically what they put under the mast was gold coins, something good like that. The idea being that if the ship wrecked and broke off, you'd have some coins to help buy your way into some type of freedom. I don't know if it ever worked or not, but that was the idea. So this box with these various mementos in there is going to be in the ship somewhere. Now the ship doesn't really have a mast, so I'm sure they're going to put it under a chair or something, but it's going to be there. It's going to be nice. Next slide, please. The Navy Construction Battalion headquarters is over in Gulfport, Mississippi. So they brought the band and they brought the honor guard. This bright, capable second-class petty officer was in charge of the color guard. They did a great job. I had to get my picture taken with him because I love standing next to sailors. Go ahead. This is the opening ceremony. Everybody's saluting and whatnot when things are being done. Next slide, please. This is our mayor, Mayor Mike Seminary. He was given an opportunity to give an oration, and he thanked the assembled people for giving us the honor of having this ship named after us. And he did a nice job. Now, there's an entire video that if you want me, I'm going to give a copy of the video to Cable Access, Prairie Public, KXMB, KFYR, Bismarck Tribune, State Historical Society. So if you really want to see it, you could it'll probably be shown on cable sometime, Cable Access. You'll be able to see the whole ceremony. You'll be able to hear every single word that our mayor uttered. All right, next slide, please. And here she is, as you saw in the video, she's proclaiming that this ship is named the City of Bismarck. Next slide, and here, wham! The foam really went over there. She did a great job. She smashed on the first try. A lot of power. And this is their formal picture at the end. And one of these guys is my admiral. I think this guy is Admiral Du Muba. We're going to talk about him in a minute. All right, let's have the next slide, please. They got to have cake. And he got to use his sword, and he and Congresswoman Harmon got to cut the cake. He's got the 4 bars. He is the captain. He's the master. That's his ship. He's a civilian mariner. Now, the joy of being a civilian mariner in the Navy is that you're paid better than the Navy people are. Patricia Evenson is paid way more than the lieutenant junior grade in the Navy is, and she knows it, and she's very appreciative. Now, the reason the Navy did this, went to civilians, is because they figured out that they're having lots of problems manning these ships. So they took all the oilers, all the ammo ships, all the supply ships, all the reefers, a hospital ship, and a few transports, and they turned them over to the Military Sea Lift Command. Military Sea Lift Command is a Navy organization that controls these ships, but all these ships are manned by civilian mariners. Now what happens is that they have fewer civilian mariners than they would have a Navy crew, way fewer numbers, because they don't worry about guns, they don't worry about civil defense, gas masks, that kind of stuff. They do worry about firefighting, and they don't worry about discipline. And the reason they don't worry about discipline is because if they lip off, they just get kicked off the ship, and they're getting good money for this job, so they want to be there. And the Navy has found that when one of these ships comes back from deployment, Normally when a Navy warship comes back from the point, oh, they want to get out. And they all want to get on the beach, and they want to go home, and they want to take tours, and these guys, when the civilian mariners come back, they're good for about 2-3 weeks, maybe a month, before they start calling back and saying, when can I go back to sea? And they basically get a contract to ride for a particular period of time, for a particular cruise. So then they're essentially re-up through the Union, back onto the ship. So not everybody is going to be on the ship forever. People will change and move about. They'll go to different ships. Patricia will be going to a different ship at some point. They all rotate them around. But the Navy has found they get a cook on. They get some good cooks on board. They give them good food. They get decent staterooms. None of this double bucking stuff. They maybe a couple to a stateroom. They all have their own bathroom and shower in the stateroom. It's really nice. They will have Navy people on particular missions to do communications and liaison. And then what they'll carry is they'll maybe carry a company of Marines and their equipment. They might carry a company of Seabees and their equipment. They might carry some special forces. They'll take them from point A to point B, pretty high speed. And they load them, unload them, and that's their job. And most of these ships will not be making ocean cruises back and forth. Most of them will be stationed at some port overseas, some friendly port, and crews will change over time. But the ships will pretty much stay there unless they have to come back to be repaired, things like that. This guy is Donald Winter. I had to seek him out. He's a great guy. He was the Secretary of the Navy under George W. Bush. He was the one who named the submarine the North Dakota. And he's been he's the one Secretary of the Navy retired who goes to all the commissionings and christenings he can get to. He really loves them. He thinks it's a great deal. And I personally thank him for giving the submarine to our state. Next one. All right, this is our sort of formal portrait, minus Susan because she was gone. This is Deb and Mike Seminary and Morgan, Greg and Nancy, the master, Captain Jim Reagan, and myself. Was a wonderful ceremony. People were really nice to us. We thoroughly enjoyed it. Let's have the next slide, please. All right. Now, our ship, there's the initial construction hangar where they make all these components and all these assembly things, and they bring them over to this hangar right here. This is the side of this big hangar where all the EFPs are built. Christening and the keel lane were held in this big hangar. And we sat under the ship for the christening and the keel lane. So right under, big ships over us, we sat right under it. It's all in blocks. So this is our ship, fully assembled, ready to get moved out. So they're moving it out, and they're putting on this barge. The next picture, please. Overhead shot of it coming out. You see the number 9? This is us, the city of Bismarck, 9. Next one slide. And can you further stretch out one more time? All right, so she's on the barge, and she's moved down, and she's now in the water, of course, and she's operating. She's getting her engine, she's revved up. All right, next slide, please. All right, bonus time. This is the guy here. No.
I'm so sorry, Bob.
This is the bonus guy right here, Rear Admiral D.L. Mewborn. He's the commander of the Military Sea Lift Command. Now, I'm showing you this because this guy, I've been trying to figure out how to get the people from Bismarck on board this ship at some nice event. And I've been talking to the captain. I said, can you possibly arrange that when the ship is just turned over to the Navy, you hold it for a few days down on the civilian piers in Mobile, Alabama, and we'll bring a bunch of North Dakotans down and we'll just walk over and have a great time. Oh, he said, I think that's a great idea. Great idea. So on the Friday night, which would be the 12th of May, they had this nice reception, and I met this guy. He's the head of the Military Sea Lift Command. I said, Admiral, I said, I got a real favor to ask of you. I said, can you possibly, use your good offices to hold the ship for a few days down there in Mobile so we can have people from Bismarck come down there and get on board? Well, he said, I think so. He said, Captain Reagan, come over here. So Captain Reagan joined us, and he said, why don't you bring your ship to Norfolk in April? And then you can take all these people from Bismarck out on a Tiger cruise. So that means, if he keeps his word on it, we're going to be able to, anybody who wants to go out from Bismarck or any of our expats want to go out there, go out to Norfolk. We'll probably do it on a Friday and Saturday. Go out on a Thursday, be there Friday, Saturday, come back on a Sunday. On one day, they're going to take us on board their ship and give us a ride out to sea. We'll be able to see that. It'll be really cool. But then the next day, we will go to the Navy yard and see some of the ships here. We'll go see a carrier and some other things. Then we'll go on board a real ship, a destroyer. Anyway, this is the guy, and I'm trying to be his pal so he doesn't forget us. Next one. All right, we are the Bismarck Historical Society. History. So something happened significant that I got my Navy History magazine yesterday. I finally read the article today. This guy here is Lieutenant Commander Joel Hobart. He's the executive officer of the USS North Dakota. He's a Naval Academy graduate, qualified submarine officer, and he has a PhD in history from Ohio State University. And he wrote a book previously called Execute Against Japan. It was a decision to conduct unrestricted submarine warfare in World War II. Just a moment about that. You know, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor at 8 o'clock in the morning on December 7th, local time. We had always been against unrestricted submarine warfare as a nation. 7 hours later, the Navy on its own issued an order to all submarines to conduct unrestricted warfare against Japan. Whole different change, and that's what it was. They went out to kill Japanese ships and people as much as they could. So this guy, today, he won first prize of the $5,000 in the professional historian category of the U.S. Naval Institute's inaugural Chief of Naval Operations Naval History Essay Contest. His essays on recapturing the Navy, the interwar Navy strategic magic. And what he's talking about there is the 30s, where all the Navy people got together and thought about what they could do and how they could do things in future wars. And most of the things they thought about, they executed in World War II. And it was really quite something. He's suggesting we need to do some of that now. Let's have the next slide.
But he's on the USS North Dakota, not the Bismarck.
Yeah, he's on the USS North Dakota. He's the submarine executive officer. Thank you for asking that question. All right. Here are, North Dakota's at sea right now, working for deployment. I think it's going to be deployed at the end of the year. I'm thinking maybe early next year. We'll go on a 6-month deployment somewhere. Our present commanding officer, Mike Hollenbach, is going to be relieved in a change of command on November 9, 2017. I'm going to be there. And this new guy, Commander Mark Robinson's taking over. Now, this guy has got to be the luckiest guy in the world because he's taken over a brand new submarine that is all fixed up, ready to go, the latest and greatest stuff on it. And he gets to deploy with it. He gets to actually drive it around the world. What a great deal. This guy, Mike Hollenbach, I said to him, God, that's too bad, Mike. He said, no, that's the way the Navy works. So he's never had a deployment with this ship. He's been out. The first commanding officer is Doug Gordon. He was able to go to the Med for 3 months right after they were commissioned and do an underwater, a launch and recovery of an underwater unmanned vehicle. First time ever been done in history. So this guy is lucky. He's going to take a brand new ship. This guy should have been able to cruise, but they went in the yards for what's called post-commissioning availability. They're supposed to be there for 6 months. They were there for 2 years. What had happened in the Minnesota, the North Dakota, and the John Warner, those 3 ships, there's a company in Florida called New Flow, and they made pipes to fit in the ship. Well, they got one of their guys blew the whistle on them. They were cheating. When the pipes bend, it creates a tension on the elbow. So what they were doing is sort of welding over those things and covering them over so you couldn't see them. And they were giving defective parts to the submarines. So North Dakota just had to get hers all corrected. The chief of naval operations flew up to congratulate one of the sailors. They had a diminutive-sized sailor who was able to work his way in, crawl in to some space, and get an elbow replaced. the chief of naval operations came up and thanked him personally for doing that. Really quite something. Anyway, these are both great guys, and I'm sure this guy's going to have, he's going to have an unblemished cruise. He's going to go with a brand new ship. This guy was able to, he's been operating around the coast. He's been improving all the weapon system. They launched for the first time a Tomahawk cruise missile from the vertical launch system where they have 2 cylinders. Very, very cool. What's the next guy? What's the next one?
It's done.
Is this it?
Yep.
Okay, so do you have any questions or anything you'd like to know? Does anybody want to see that very first video again? Yeah.
Bob, what
You can leave, Susan.
cost of this ship?
This one's about $250 million, I think. It's a pretty much a bargain. The North Dakota, the submarine, is $2.6 billion.
How many will there be in this series?
They originally contracted for 10, and the plan was they're going to give 5 to the Army and 5 to the Navy. And so they gave 5 to the Army, or gave 1 to the Army, and the Army said, this is a lot of work taking care of ships, you can have them all. So they gave them back to the Navy, and they were originally called JHSV, Joint High-Speed Vessel. And so when Secretary Mabus was here in Bismarck to announce the name for the second time, he said, we're scrapping that JHSV designation, we're going to call them EPFs. And this is going to be called the City of Bismarck. Originally, it came out as the Bismarck, which sort of surprised me because in all my years of lobbying for a ship, 23 years of lobbying to get to North Dakota, I even talked to a guy in the Pentagon once, some fancy captain. I said, you know, why don't, at least give us an Aegis cruiser and we'll name it the Bismarck and we'll put it in the North Atlantic. He said, there's absolutely no way you're going to get the name Bismarck on a ship. It's not going to happen. That belongs to the German Navy. So when that came out, it originally was announced as the Bismarck. So when he was here to name, he said, I'm naming this ship the City of Bismarck, which is rational. And I'd already been in touch with the Navy people in the shipyard, and they were talking about Bismarck. So after that meeting, I sent them an email. I said, well, we're looking forward to the City of Bismarck. And they both got back to me right away. No, you're wrong. It is the Bismarck. So I thought, God, I must have misheard this. So I emailed Navy Captain Bob Smith, a Navy SEAL, who was the aide to the Secretary of the Navy. I said, did I get this wrong? He said, I'll take care of it. Within half an hour, I get emails from both of them that said, yes, it is named the City of Bismarck. So it's nice that they listened to somebody. Next question. Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Is there any attempt to armor the boats at all?
Absolutely not. This ship, if it gets in a hostile environment, its saving grace is the bullets are going to go straight through. It is not designed to slug it out. And I think that my own personal opinion is that they're not going to be able to operate anywhere near a combat environment unless they're somewhere within a close range of a carrier air group so they can put airplanes over it. And I think they're going to need also some surface warfare. These guys are not designed to go to war. Absolutely not. Tom?
How does one go about making arrangements to go on that Tiger?
You stand by and I'll get the word out when I get this lined up. Because you have to pay your own transportation, hotel down there, meals. We got some money. The USS North Dakota Committee has some money left over, but we're using that just for the submarine. But we had a bunch of merchandise left over, and we started liquidating that and selling it, and then put all the proceeds from that into a fund for the City of Bismarck. So we've built up several thousands of dollars there. The first thing I have to do is I have to buy these plank owner plaques for the initial crew. We told them we'd do that. We're going to give you a nice plank owner plaques. And then we might make some of those available and sell them or give them as tributes for a fundraising project. I haven't gone into fundraising because I really haven't had any clue as to how much money I'm going to need. But if we go out to Norfolk, we might need some money to put on a dinner out there, especially to host some people, as opposed to everybody just paying out of pocket. So we might have one dinner that we'll charge X dollars for, and we'll try to raise some money to make that happen. Thank you very much for coming to listen to City of Bismarck.